Welcome to Mocktails and Meal Prep Express. We've got 30 minutes. Let's use it properly. I'm Kat, registered dietitian, and we're going to prepare today 3 recipes to set ourselves up for success this week. So we've got first our egg bake, which we'll use for breakfast sandwiches. Then we got our taco meat that I'll be cooking in the Instant Pot, but you can definitely do on the stove. And then finally, we've got our energy balls. And so let's get started by preheating our oven to 350. Just double check. Yeah, 350. That's step number 1. Number 2 is we're going to prepare the mixture and our mold to put it in. So let's first mix in all our ingredients. What you'll need are some kind of oil, or I'll probably be using a parchment paper. You'll need a dozen of eggs if you're making the 6 servings. So that means 2 eggs per servings, which will give you a good amount of protein, about 24 grams total if you follow the recipe exactly per serving. Then you'll need some milk, seasonings. I'll be using a seasoning mix as a shortcut, but you can definitely use garlic powder, onion powder, salt, pepper, some shredded cheese if you'd like, and any adding toppings of your choice. So that could be peppers that you cut up. It could be a vegetable mix that's pre-chopped that you have frozen, or that you chop yourself, but we're going for super simple and quick today. So I will just stick to eggs and milk and some spices, and then I'll add the cheese as a cheese slice on top. So I've got, oh, and I've got some bacon in here too. So I'll take that out for later with my English muffins. And actually I'll leave that in here for now. And of course, I need to change my bag of milk, so that's okay. That's the reality, right? So let me first start off by cracking all my eggs. If you wanted an even quicker shortcut, you could go for the whole eggs in a carton and just buy the carton, mix that in here, add a bit of milk. Then you could also add like a bag of chopped frozen vegetables, some shredded cheese that you bought pre-bought. So you've got yourself like a super quick shortcut to make this. Literally the longest part will be preheating the oven. And the benefit of that is that you get a bit more flexibility by doing it yourself, and it's obviously much cheaper, even if you go for those shortcuts, as compared to buying it from the store. And so I will crack my 12 eggs. And as I mentioned, just to limit the mess and not having to scrub, I'm going to use parchment paper. So I'll bring that here over the top. Now, like I said, if you have some ham, or you could have some prosciutto, like some leftover protein of some sort, you could mix it into here. We'll also want to add a little bit of milk to thin it out. That is optional. You really don't have to. If you want it to be more concentrated in eggs, you can do that too. If you want to use a milk alternative, if you're dairy free or whatnot, we have lactose free milk here, and it calls for half a cup. But to be honest, this is really a preference thing. So this is where measurement is not required. So I will just eyeball it, go with color, because ultimately I just want it to still be like a yellowy orange. And I just want a little bit of milk to thin it out, but I don't want too much. Also, lactose-free milk has a bit of a sweeter taste, so I don't want too much of it for that reason. And you know what I realized? I have my glass here and I forgot our mocktail, the most important part. Let's get to that. Let's set aside our eggs. And the mocktail today is infused tea. I'm going to do a cold infusion because it's that much quicker. I've got some frozen raspberries for color and a bit of sweetness without necessarily adding sweetener or added sugar. I'm going to put some frozen pieces of raspberries. I'm going to put my tea bag in here. And like I said, because it's a cold infusion, I can just put cold water. Try to shove that in there. It doesn't float. If you don't have cold infusion kind of tea bags, that's totally fine. You could steep your tea and just pour it over ice. Obviously, I'll wait for this to steep a little bit. Use a spoon, but we're doing this at home. It's for ourselves. So look how cute this is. No sugar added. This will be our fun little mocktail for today. All right, and as this steeps, we'll continue on. This is the reality of a cooking with Tab method. We're home, we're doing our best. We forget sometimes, but that doesn't stop us from cooking. I've got my egg mixture. Like I said, instead of the onion and garlic powder, I'm gonna actually use my Mrs. Dash mix. I love the garlic and herb. This one's the all-purpose seasoning. I'll be using that. Don't be shy with this. The fun thing about Mrs. Dash is there's no salt added, so it doesn't contribute to your daily sodium intake. You could also use onions in here. I'm trying to be careful with FODMAPs if you have IBS. You know that onions, for example, can ferment in your stomach a little bit more. And for most people, they're totally fine. They add flavor. For some people that have more sensitive gut, it can lead to bloating, constipation, diarrhea. Not so fun. I'm going to skip the onions. You could add some shredded cheese if you want. And then I'll add some salt and pepper. So that way I can put a ton of seasoning to flavor it. I can control the amount of salt. Again, we're really eyeballing. No need to measure, which saves so much time. Okay. I have my mixture here ready to go. I could add also some frozen spinach, which I often have in the freezer. But again, for the purpose of this simple recipe, we're going to go with just eggs. I'm going to pour this onto my parchment paper. I'm going to flatten out the corners a little bit. Make sure it spreads evenly. And then once it's baked, we're going to cut it up. And then this really shows how even your table counter is. Mine is clearly not completely even because it's not spreading out entirely, but that's fine. As long as it's somewhat even for it to cook evenly, that's all that matters. And my oven is ready to go. This will take about 15 minutes, 15 to 20. So I'm going to prioritize putting that in the oven, being careful it doesn't spill as I'm walking over. And pop it in. There you go. All right, and I will set my timer for 15 minutes to start. Here we go. Now, step number 2, recipe number 2, we've got the taco meat, which I choose to cook in the Instant Pot because it's very low effort, limited active cooking time. I'll show you what I mixed in here. So I've got my meat, which I had frozen. I bought a bigger portion. I froze it in small bags and then thawed it, although I could put it directly frozen in the fridge. And so I will dump the ground meat directly in here. Again, fresh or frozen. It might just take a little bit more time fresh. I will wash my hands because we're handling raw meat and you don't want it to cross-contaminate with other ingredients. Second, I will add my seasoning. In the recipe, you see the individual seasoning, again, in effort to save time. I'm going to dump the whole taco seasoning. This is from like the old El Paso kit that I had like half left. I'm going to use that. And then another trick that I'm going to do, I use this for my pizza sauce. I use this for any kind of tomato flavoring that I want to add. It's passata. You can use any brand. I'm going to add a little bit of this as a liquid. So I'm going to use about a quarter to half a cup. You might think like tacos, tomatoes, weird, but there usually is some tomato in there. And then finally, I'm going to choose to add a little bit of beans to expand or extend rather the portion of protein and meat to add some fiber. You could add some white beans, kidney beans, black beans, lentils mix very well with ground meat. You could also add TVP, which will obviously require some liquid to rehydrate. So I'm going to rinse those out. I'm going to open my can, rinse out the black beans in a strainer. And I could choose, because they're pre-cooked, I could choose to add them after my ground beef is cooked. I choose to add it before because I'm okay if they're a bit softer and turn more into almost a paste, like black bean paste. It's really up to you if you want the whole pieces or not. I've rinsed this really well. Rinsing will also help when it comes to digestive symptoms. If you tend to get like gassy, bloated with beans, it also helps with nutrient absorption because there's actually what we call anti-nutrients in some legumes, basically components that will prevent absorption of certain nutrients, which isn't a big deal. It's not like a big thing, but rinsing it will help to just make the most out of all the nutrients that are found in there. So that's the benefit. We've got my meat, we've got the beans, the seasoning. I might add, I'll use my bowl here just to add a tiny bit of water if you have any broth laying around. Usually they say like a cup of liquid will be good to make sure the pressure cooking works well. And that is it. So beans, meat, it doesn't look pretty, but it's going to cook this way in a super efficient way. And so this will go in the pressure cooker on high for 10 minutes or so. So I'll just clean up my space a little bit. I still have my milk out here. All right, so pressure cook for 10 minutes. Remember that it does take a bit of time to come to pressure. So that's gonna go ahead and cook. And in the meantime, we've got to try our tea infusion here. We also make a warm tea if you're in a colder season. The time I'm filming this, we're in December, but even though it's like cold out, it's warm in my house. I can't figure out the heating quite yet. So I don't mind something cold and refreshing. Good. Yeah. So all we have to do is basically wait for our meat to cook, wait for our eggs to be baked. Let's do our energy bites, and then we will prep our items for the sandwiches as we're ready to assemble. So I'm going to grab a large bowl for the energy bowls, and we're going to grab all our ingredients, and that's where we're going to start measuring a little bit more. I'll grab my measuring cup, and so I've got most of my ingredients here. I'll list them out for you so you can take them out if you haven't already. You'll need some peanut butter, nut butter, seed butter. Tahini works well if you want nut-free because it's a seed butter. We'll want maple syrup. You can use honey as well, or you can even use brown sugar as a sweetener. We will do oats, vanilla protein powder, which is optional. We'll add a bit more protein, and you could use chocolate as well if you wanted, or any other flavor. Salt, some kind of chocolate chips. You could use raisins, craisins, anything like that. I've got M&Ms, which would be super fun. And then also optional, you could add some seeds. So you could do chia seeds, hemp seeds, ground flax. I'll grab the salt and a tiny bit of chia seeds here. I've got some hemp seeds in the fridge, which is best to keep the hemp seeds in the fridge because of their unsaturated fat content. They're prone to oxidation, which just means it can go bad and it'll start to smell a little funky. So I keep those in the fridge. So what we'll start with is our liquid ingredients. So our peanut butter, our maple syrup, which I got in a can and transfer into mason jar. So you want to measure out about a cup of peanut butter. I'm going to double the recipe. I'm going to eyeball because I find that measuring peanut butter sucks because it sticks to the measuring cup. and that part's really annoying. You can eyeball that kind of compare if you want, seeing like, does that compare? The worst that's going to happen is it's going to be too liquidy or too dry, which we can always fix. All right, I'm going to go with that. I'm going to go with peanut butter because we have some around and it tastes yummy and we've got no allergies here or restrictions. Because I'm doubling, I'm going to do about 1/4 cup of maple syrup. I'm going to start to mix that a little bit to create more liquid mixture. Depending on how runny your peanut butter is, mine's the bottom of the jar, which tends to be in its natural peanut butter. It tends to be less runny towards the bottom, even if you mix it really well. So I may add a tiny bit of water to my mixture, which will be easier than once the dry ingredients have been added. So I want this to be a bit runny. Especially I'm adding protein powder. I might add a tiny bit more water. Again, it really depends on your peanut butter consistency or nut butter, or whatever you're using as a potential substitute. And you might see it's not mixing super well. The reason being there's some fat obviously in your peanut butter. So when you add water, it'll tend to separate, but that's okay. It'll mix in quite well in the end. Then I'm going to add my protein powder. I'm going to do about a scoop of it, which I'll add to the wet ingredients so that it mixes well. I can also add the salt at this point, 1/4 teaspoon. Again, you can do a generous pinch, especially because I'm using unsweetened, unsalted peanut butter. And depending on your protein powder too, it might vary in terms of how thick or not thick it might be. We want basically, it could be a little thinner than that, but we just want it to be well mixed. All right. Powder, and then now it's pretty much the time to add our dry ingredients. It's as easy as that. So I'm going to do 2 cups of oats. Again, had I used my cup to measure the peanut butter, it would be all sticky now to measure the oats, and it would contaminate the oats, especially if you're on a toast at any point and have someone that has peanut allergies, and so best not contaminate. That is why I eyeball my peanut butter measurement. So I've added 2 cups of this. We're going to add about 1/4 cup of seeds of choice. I'm going to add whatever is left in here. I'll have to refill it from my bigger Costco bag. Those are my chia seeds. And then the hemp seeds, I'll do about 1/4 cup or a handful. Again, those are optional. It doesn't really contribute to the texture much or flavor even. It just adds some nutrition, a bit more protein, fiber, healthy fat. And then of course, the best part, the M&Ms or your toppings of choice, could be shredded coconut. I'm going to do half the bag. They're pretty big M&Ms. And then basically you just mix everything until it sticks. You can add a bit more maple syrup to help stick, a bit of extra water. I might do that, tiny bit more water. So it can be slightly thinner to mix well. You don't want it to be too runny though, because you want it to obviously hold into ball form. If you want it to be even easier, instead of energy balls, you could also do energy bars or like granola bars. So you could just pack this into a mold and then cut it. That would be an even quicker method. All right, and now you can see the consistency. If I make a ball with it, it sticks pretty well. It's a pretty small ball, if you can see. And if it's too thin, you could add a bit more oats, or you could even add, I have some Rice Krispie squares here, or not squares, Rice Krispies. Maybe I'll add a tiny bit of that for crunch because it's not necessarily too thin, but it's very doughy as compared to the amount of oats. So I just feel like it could use a little bit more dry ingredients, and you get used to as you make more of these. All right, I think we're looking good here. Let's see, let's do the sticky test. Oh yeah, definitely holds well together. That's what you want, right? You want it to hold well together. So there's the one I had already made. I can use that to help me. You could use a regular spoon too, but I find it helps to keep them even size. And I'm also hearing my Instant Pot just reached optimal pressure and temperature. So now it will start pressure cooking for 10 minutes. And you can let it naturally release, let the pressure naturally release, especially if you're not in a rush. If you are, you should be able to open it up. I feel like it should be cooked. Worst case is you put it on the saute mode and you just heat it up, get it a bit more crispy. That's the benefit of the Instant Pot. Otherwise, if you're cooking it on the stove, obviously you just need to pay closer attention as it cooks, stir it a little bit. But same goes with the ingredients. You might need to put a little less liquid as well. And this is really the hardest part. All we have left is assembling our breakfast sandwiches, if you wish to do that. Mocktails and Meal Prep is not only getting the recipe inspiration, but also getting a bit of guidance, having other people to cook with, creating a bit of a community. And there's always substitutions available to help you save money, not have to buy a ton of ingredients just to make those recipes, being able to customize them to your family's preferences. So I will be checking in on my eggs, which I think are ready at this point. Turn off my alarm. That was quick. And I can feel that it's cooked. You can see I'll cut it in a little bit. I'll just set it aside, turn my oven off, and keep doing this over here. Obviously, if you double the recipe, it takes just a little bit longer to form your balls, which is why you can just also pack it into a mold or into if I have one of those flatter containers like this, you can pack it down and let it cool. And then once it's cool, you would cut them into bars, which I find is like an even quicker method than making little balls like this. So 2 of them equals a serving size. So obviously you can have as many as you feel you need to feel satisfied as a snack. You can combine it with a fruit or a dairy or alternative for a bit of extra protein to keep you full for longer. And the fun thing about this is you can totally customize it. Like I said, 1 week you can do with M&Ms. The other you can do more like coconut, like shredded coconut and chocolate chip. And then you can also freeze those very well, which is probably what I'll do because I have a lot of these energy balls. So I'll put them all in the fridge for now. And then once they're firm and they've cooled, I'll probably freeze a couple. And then the benefit is next time you meal prep, even if you have a little left, you end up building kind of a variety stash in your freezer that you can come back to. Put the rest aside for us to tackle the breakfast sandwiches and finish up with that. So I will store these in the fridge. The prep time for this recipe is like an hour and 15 minutes. Only reason is the refrigeration time, which technically you could eat before you even refrigerate. It's just so that they hold a bit better together. So truly, it's like a 15-minute recipe tops. I'll pop them in here, and then I'll grab the remaining ingredients. So I've got some bacon from the weekend. Obviously not the healthiest, but it adds a little salt, a little crunch. I love that. You can use prosciutto as a bit of a lower fat option. You could put ham in the egg or a slice of ham in your breakfast sandwiches. Totally up to you. I got these pre-sliced cheese, and then I've got my English muffins. If you want to get a bit fancier, you could toast these. I'll keep this because I'll store them back in there. I will just slice them up. In terms of toasting these, you could do it in a toaster oven like I've got here. You could also put them facing up on a baking sheet as well. Perhaps that same baking sheet, put them on boil. You just gotta keep really close eye on it. Or you really don't have to. Ultimately, when you thaw it, it's gonna get a bit softer, so toasting won't make a huge difference. I think the most important, maybe to put a tiny bit of butter or margarine or something like that. So that's what I will do this time. And of course, if you do anything different, make sure you leave a comment below. Let me know how it turns out. So many variations that your input is super helpful. I am using margarine. It's a healthy fat derived from oils, which are again unsaturated fats, makes up for the bacon I'll put in it, which again is fine in moderation. I think that's the most important thing, is balance, right? We're already making these at home, making an effort to control the ingredients, the quality of the ingredients, and satisfaction is so important after a meal. It actually helps us in making sure we don't overeat just out of seeking that pleasure from food. Don't forget about that. Put that back. And then finally, I will grab, let's see here, my egg mixture. I'll put it here so you can see. And then let's see how I'm going to divide that. So obviously the benefit of putting it on the large baking sheet is that it is more flat, thinner, cooks quicker. I'm going to try this. You can cut it literally however you'd like. I'm going to make thinner strips. 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to fold them up. Again, see what works for you. And obviously this is going to be a bit thicker than your usual like McDonald's or Tim Hortons breakfast sandwich because it has 2 eggs, higher protein. You see what I'm doing here? I'm just folding it as such. It's gonna make a thick breakfast sandwich. You could use like a special mold. That works too. All right. And then I'll just fold this up, use a cleanup, compostable, parchment paper. I've got my Instant Pot yelling at me in the back saying it's ready, but I'm gonna let it release naturally. Also gonna take a little sipping break. Let's celebrate the fact that we created 3 recipes so quickly. There's a bit of strategy behind the recipes I pick. As you see, one of them's in the oven. While it's in the oven, we might tackle the other one that uses maybe another type of gadget, like the Instant Pot or on the stove. And then the third one's more of a no-cook option. It's all thought out that way to make the most of our meal prep time. If you want a bit more of a guide, you want new recipes, you want the community, the accountability, because it's so easy to do anything but that. but then you end up not knowing what to eat throughout the week. So this is your chance to prioritize your healthy eating, put in place strategies to help you reach your goals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and get some yummy recipes. I don't think people, I know you like maybe your like McDonald's or Tim Hortons breakfast sandwich, but you don't realize how much better it could be when you make it at home because you can customize it. Whether it's adding veggies for your health or just doing a much thicker one that's higher protein, keeps you satisfied for longer. And now all I have to do is wrap these up and freeze them. You put a couple in the fridge for the week and we're good to go. I will use my parchment paper again and I'll create pieces with it to wrap them up. The benefit of that is it can be microwave as opposed to using foil, which you'd have to unwrap. So I'm creating a bit of my production line here. You'll see who got like wrapped. Doesn't have to be pretty as long as it holds together. Again, you don't really need to toast the buns. It is a preference thing. And it's all going to get softer as you heat it up. My recommendation is if they're from frozen, maybe thaw it the night before to make sure that the inside also thaws a bit, and then microwave it. If you have a bit more time, you could put it in the panini press or in the oven if you're like working from home and have that flexibility. But you could also just microwave it directly from the freezer, but just know that it'll take a bit longer and it might be a little uneven in the sense of the outside will be really warm and the inside might still be cold, which might impact the pleasurable aspects to it. I'm going to shove a couple in this bag, reuse this bag. You can label it. Put a couple in here, probably like 3 in the freezer, put 2 in the fridge. So join me for Mocktails and Meal Prep, the full version, which is an hour and a half long. We prep usually 5 recipes for the week, which includes breakfast, snack, meal / lunch options, and help you reach your goals and adapt to your family's needs and preferences and whatever you have lying around the fridge. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope to see you very soon.